Okay, so formal welcome to this month's DIVAAN ISHQ to all of you here. And I was just saying earlier that the intention is for next month to have a psychologist, but something came up this morning where I was thinking if we could get a Sufi master who has just right now, he's currently in Khalwa and he's from the Chishtiya order, and I could possibly ask him if he'd like to be our guest for next month to speak about silence, just because it's in the theme. So we can maybe vote on that. And obviously we have to see if he's okay with that. What do you guys think?
Looking forward, Sayeda. Excellent idea.
It's Sayyid Salman. You may have, yeah, he's the Gaddi Nashin of the Khaja Muhyiddin Chishti's. He's a caretaker, basically. His family, I guess, but I know. So it would be nice because this is a practice that is very it's very practiced with the Chishtiya Sufis.
Do you mean Khalwa?
Yeah, Khalwa. Because he had announced actually that I'm going to be going in for my chilla, like my 40-day seclusion, because I guess, people message and so forth. So sometimes you have to put that message out there. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And a lot of that was surfacing around that time about the idea of just seclusion. After my leg incident, I was just like thrown off my normal day-to-day activities. And I just kept feeling as the days were passing, this sort of pull towards like some sort of seclusion, but maybe not the formal, full-on seclusion, but it's, I guess in its own way, it is in its own way type of seclusion. So I kept seeing that theme the whole month. And yeah, so that's why we decided perhaps this time we can cover silence, because you may be secluded, but you may not be silent, and you may be among the people and chatter and noise, but you may be silent. So it's in actuality the reality within. And I know that in the Naqshbandi principles, you have Khalwat Dar Anjum, which is to be with the people, but to be in connection within, in Rabita, in seclusion, in remembrance, whatever that means. So it's an actual practice that's supposed to be a sort of like an actual way of being. And yeah.
I would actually like to share a story that I just was inspired to apparently remember. Sure. That my teacher used to tell when we were living in the ashram. And that's from a friend of his who in his childhood lived somewhere, I can't remember where, but rural, countryside India. And he was apparently maybe a boy of, I don't know, 6-7 years at this time. And later on, also, I think he was both initiated into some Sufi order, but also a yogi. But at the time he was going to go visit some other village. I don't remember what he was going to do there, but he didn't know where he was going. And hence, when he was walking the road, he had to ask for directions at a point. And there came a man approaching him. And he thought to himself, okay, I'm going to ask this guy, like, should I take right or left turn in the next crossroads. But then when the guy came closer, he just felt this really strong feeling of like he can't ask him. So he just let the guy pass, and he, thought to himself, that's weird. Like, now there went my chance, and he basically had to keep walking. And then I think he came to the next village and encountered someone who was in the village and told him about this incident. And he said, like, I couldn't ask this guy for directions. And he said, oh, how did he look? And then he described this man. And then he said, oh, that's my father. He's a Mooney, meaning he's a silent one. And he's been silent for over 10 years. That's why you couldn't ask him, because he's having that kind of a radiation. So that's the story that always somehow, I don't know, it stuck with me, because you can become so silent that others can't even bring up that kind of noise around you, apparently. But he, I think, was actually physically silent, had chosen to be in physical silence as a practice.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, you mentioned you can be in silence among people, inward silence, but he was actually physically not talking for 10 years. So that's, I think one of the more, of course, there are, people doing this, obviously, but it's maybe not so commonly seen in society, at least like that.
I think it's also something that's very innate to all human beings. I was just thinking while you were speaking, instead of listening, being present, just a flashback of growing up, childhood memories of going into the closet and just hiding there for a long time. And it wasn't like a hide and seek sort of situation, and just wanting to be alone at times. I just remember that. And just having kids, there's always this sort of level of silence or getting away sort of thing that that is done. I don't know if if we can maybe even possibly in our penning today go back into that desire, as far as we can remember, of wanting to be alone, and just remembering the that desire to be. Yeah.
Were you, May, wanting to say something? It looked like you were earlier on.
I was just thinking how hard that is to not talk for 10 years. That's,
well, I guess you'll have to just redefine your whole life. I mean, it's just not possible otherwise.
Yeah, and because you're always compelled to speak, people who don't, in society, they think if you're, or at least the conditioning is you need to talk and benefit the people around you. Talking is important. So I was thinking, maybe because I think that way, I was thinking, how is he benefiting anyone by staying silent? Maybe it's a wrong thought, but that's the thought I was having.
There's an actual viewpoint of what you said, because I think Imam Ghazali was of the opinion to have a balance between both, to be away from the people, but then you don't really get to see or correct yourself, because you don't, nothing comes really forth as maybe readily as when you're with people, meaning your shadows and so forth. So I think keeping that balance is key. Because I know for sure Imam Ghazali did. I wish I had that here in my notes, but obviously the Sufis and the mystics of the past had their own sort of opinions on this. I think full on is not recommended in the Islamic tradition, However, in the spiritual traditions, you have prolonged periods, but a full-on seclusion, meaning full-on mute, is not like monasticism. It's not. It's not our way, because we are in a world where there's existence in people, and association is beneficial equally. So that's definitely something. And then you find this across all traditions, the whole idea of seclusion, with the Christian mystics, the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Sufis, the Jews as well.
I think there is a distinction between what you practice when you're living in society, as part of society. In the yogic tradition, you kind of have a distinction between living a so-called householder's life, meaning you have a family and you have, you know, the responsibilities that come along with that, and whether you're living sort of an ascetic's life. So I think, yeah, if you're living a householder's life, then no chance you're going to go around, be silent for 10 years and people are going to be, you know, benefiting from that. That would be horrible. I mean, thinking of like having kids and you're not talking to them, or like your relatives can't get access to you in that way, that would not be fair. But yeah, like Alicia, you said, I mean, times of seclusion, if you're free from those responsibilities, but it seems that may not then be, maybe the Sufis either are not practicing that. I don't know. In the yogic tradition, people do seclude for many years too, if that's, you know, if they've come to that stage where they don't have those other responsibilities. Or maybe they just leave them. I don't know.
No, the Sufis do actually practice it to a point where you have traditions where the Sufis basically, more in the previous centuries, they would actually recluse to mountains and caves and you know, cells. Most of the Sufi centric mosques and stuff, or zawiyas, you always have the cells. I remember, you know, even visiting India and Middle East, parts of the Middle East, where you have these sort of cells, where, you know, you would be in the presence of, you know, a maqam, like a saint who has passed on, and then within the boundaries of that space, you have the khalwa rooms, and most of them are very tiny, without light, and so forth. You know, they vary. I remember seeing some in Uzbekistan as well, where you know, the masters, their cells would be, you know, in the boundaries of where they're buried. And then people would go into seclusion in those places to seek the grace, the barakah, and the spiritual openings.
I saw some in Turkey, and they look like little graves almost. So how important is the remembrance of death in being silent? Like,
they say that the one of the main
Alaikum salam.
We're speaking about silence at the moment, and then more towards the khalwa, the practices of khalwa. May just mentioned the resemblance of the cellar to the grave, and this is one of the I guess intentions of the khalwa is to be remembering death. And it's sort of like that stage in the grave where you're not living, and nor are you in that, you know, the final stage of resurrection. So you're in that in between barzakh, and that's what it is. And the more I guess astringent the practice of khalwa is, for example, those who practice silence and full seclusion from people. And we have a taste of that in I'tikaf in Ramadan, in the last 10 days for those who do it, where there's so many rules, right? However, the khalwa is not, you don't have to be in a mosque setting, right? Whereas I believe the I'tikaf, that's one of the requirements. I could be wrong, but that's from what I understand. And if anyone knows better, then definitely correct me. So yeah, so that remembrance of death.
I can't speak from the Sufi tradition, but my experience from silence is, especially if you're new to silence, there may be feelings of fear, loneliness, and sometimes depression. And I would personally not advise, unless one is very versed in being silent or being actually isolated from people, to maybe accompany that with actively, I don't know, like pondering on death too. But that's just my experience from like having a lot of lay people be on retreats. And I think silence in itself does so much. There's so many lessons taught in silence that I don't even know like how much more is needed than silence itself, because it brings so much up to the surface. But I'm sure there's that aspect too of facing the essential reality that this body will die. And of course, I mean, silence would be a good time, I suppose, to ponder on that. But that's more from like an experiential, just seeing how people sometimes handle silence. We're not used to being silent. We're not used to being socially isolated from others.
Exactly. We're not used to it. And the very purpose of not the very, but I mean, I guess among the benefits of the khalwa or the silence or the seclusion would be to become independent of the exterior stimuli that we are conditioned to learn through. Our senses are constantly dependent on externalities so that we may learn. And then the khalwa is basically cutting the cord on these sort of external means. And then you're basically going inward or becoming independent, like you're dependent on the inner faculties or that inner light or that inner mode of knowing, tapping into that endless reservoir, as opposed to the finite, which is found in the world of form. So that's something that happens depending on what sort of seclusion one is following. I guess it depends on the level of the seclusion, because there's different, opinions and practices. Obviously, like you mentioned, that it's full on silence, no contact with people, no speaking, no form of like influence. I don't know. I think you mentioned that in the yogic thing that they didn't even recommend books to read.
I've been doing many sorts of silences, and different traditions have different practices, but where I was staying for the longest time in that ashram, those silences were usually meant for initiations, and that was all. I would say it was a requirement to be fully devoid of any sort of mental input. So they did say, hang out with others in the same space. We were like all in the same physical space, but there was no talking, there was no writing, there was no reading. So basically no communication in that way. That doesn't mean there's no communication like through just noticing someone else. But I know there's even stricter versions where you're not allowed to have eye contact, or then when you withdraw into your own cellar and you don't see anyone and you just get the food through some little hole in under the door or something like that. So there are so many versions.
Mm.
And then we also have talked about the Naqshbandi principles, in which there was Khalwat Dar Anjuman, like there's seclusion that you face when even you are among the people, amidst the people. So Khalwat Dar Anjuman, that sounds more like that kind of practice of that principle.
Is it?
Conscious
I don't know.
practice of that principle.
Does that usually include like you not speaking at all also, or is it more like an attitude kind of?
It's more like my interpretation. It's more like that we are among the people, but we are connected with the divine. So that connection is continuous despite being with the people, and obviously that comes with practice and being consciously practicing, and then that becomes easy with time. I mean, silence is the most overrated word, but it's the least experienced. I was thinking, I mean, I can see the notifications when Saida says that let's talk about silence, but it's so hard. It's like how and then like we don't know how to face that or experience silence. Even if we are silent, then we are unconsciously continuously engaged with the social, even in the silence. So that's, and then how do we move past those veils? That's so difficult.
I think it's so helpful to start off in a physically silence promoting place. I think you need to be extremely tough to muster up that in your normal setting. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I think going for retreat, which basically means withdrawing, going somewhere where there's others who are desiring the same thing and who are not like wanting to call you up 5 times a day to check like what's going on, or like you're not hearing news, you're not listening to music, you're just like having that space and having that structure. I think that's very helpful. And then perhaps it's like easier to bring that into your everyday life. That's my experience, but yeah, it's very tricky. We're not making it easy for us with like our phones and our gadgets. It's increasingly difficult, I think, year by year in the society to be silent.
And then even there are forced seclusions, like by divine hand, you are forced into seclusions. May? Can you reflect on that forced seclusions that we face in life?
I feel like
I don't know why I pointed out May.
no, yeah, I feel even when I'm secluded, I'm never really silent. It's very hard for me to be silent. And I remember once I went to I went to a retreat, and that was the only time where I started getting silent. Like it was a month long, and whenever he saw that we'd get very sad in the silence, because I was very overwhelmed with everything inside of me. And it's true, he kept saying like, do movements, don't go into silence right away, because it will be too depressing for you. And we wouldn't start our practice with meditation, we'd start it with yoga. Then your body could process more. I don't know, like you unwind, I guess, physically. Then you could sit and be silent. And what surprised me was how much he'd say breathe even if you're crying. Like, it doesn't matter. You have to be very, it doesn't matter if you feel like the world is collapsing, just keep breathing. But when you're on your own without like a community, it's very hard for you to cry and then come back to breathing. I mean, I'm finding it harder and harder. So I'm glad we're talking about silence. Yeah. That's it. And even if we're secluded, I'm just really thinking about how often do we accept being silent? That's it.
And as we also know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, it was during his seclusion that he received, guidance and revelation. So, I mean, it's such a sacred practice that, there's always benefit in that.
I just have to say here, because I see May's little companion coming in there. Animals, my goodness, like when you were talking about crying in silence, I think one of the most healing elements that people during the years in the ashram mentioned were the animals, because when you're silent, they still communicate with you just the same, and they understand you on a very profound level. So going into halwa with some animal friend would, I think, be a very good idea. And it also can take you out of that self-pity that you sometimes can get into when you're silent. You start feeling like you're so alone and no one likes you and like everything is just sad. And then, there's someone else that you have to care for, and that gives you some sense of purpose and connection again.
Usually even in the Sufis, when silence was something that the seeker would do, it would be administered by the spiritual guide, and then it would be under sort of like a watchfulness. You would be prescribed with practices. It wouldn't be just like, I'm going later kind of thing. You would be going with permission, and you would be, given whatever it is. One of the seclusions of Maulana Sheikh Nazim, I believe after he was married, he was asked by his Sheikh Abdullah to go into seclusion, and he was and he went to Baghdad. He went to Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, and at the end of his seclusion, as we, as it's told, is that he had actually experienced a contact with Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, the cardinal pole of all saints in the Sufi way. So his hand came out, and he received, I believe he received some coins from that time. And I'm not sure about the actual khirqa, the shawl. I'm not sure if he received it like that or through the keeper. Yeah, and I believe it's somewhere in Pakistan, in Lahore, somewhere in one of the Gun Shaker. Yeah, I think it's in that place or another one. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. It has to be, verified. But yeah, this was definitely the way to upgrade, enhance, to receive, and to connect to divine presence through khalwa and seclusion.
I am reminded of one more seclusion. When, I hope I just narrated finally, but when Sayyidah Fatima Zahra was to be conceived, Prophet Muhammad got the order to go into seclusion. And he went into the house of Sayyidina Imam Ali when he was 10 years old. That is where he made the seclusion. And after that seclusion, he went, Prophet Muhammad SAW was again ordered to now go to your wife, Sayyidah Khadija, radiyallahu anha. And then from that, he received a divine light, and then it was um, received to Sayyidah Khadija, and Sayyidah Fatima Zahra was born. So
Mhm.
that was also a seclusion, and I just got reminded of that. It was so beautiful.
Mm. Yeah, the seclusions are very symbolic precursors to an unfolding, a manifestation, a receiving, right? So, like we all basically confirm that in this time and age, how often are we even pondering or contemplating on that idea? Because it would just basically throw you off the track. You've got work, you've got life, you've got things to do. How are you going to actually take out time? But the thing is that, is it about you taking out time, or is it silence enforcing that on you, even though we're in a time where it's not a practice? So in my personal experience, I'm not claiming to be in silence, but like, this is the last thing that was on my mind. And then when I, right before my birthday, I just, got into a little bit of an accident. And so I've been thrown off the track where I'm
Forced
literally,
seclusion.
yeah, it's like, like I'm not claiming anything holy, but like, it's just, I'm off track, and I'm like literally in this, room downstairs, away from all. I can't do any work. I can't do anything. I can just basically lie down and, or sit up, and just be just with myself. So to me, it's just like, and even I was resisting that, and then my phone died on me, so because I was still like, in contact and all of that. So that happened. It's just like reminder that silence, I guess it's just part and parcel of the path of the seeker. So sometimes even if you don't consciously seek it out, you will be sought out. You will get that in whatever way or form. So we don't have to be attached to what that means, because every time and age, like, you're not going to have people doing the whole mountain or the cave thing. It's not maybe a practical way. So spirituality is constantly being reshuffled to meet the needs of modern day or the present time people. So what was required in the past, maybe a lot of people now are learning lessons through heartbreaks, in terms of the lessons that people would learn through other means, where they'd have access to teachers all day long or be able to go into seclusions. There's so many, I guess, new pathways of learning. And so there is no this way and that way sort of works only. It's just there's so many variations. Yeah.
I think there is a way in this day and age to also have that full silence. And I do think it is beneficial to experience that. I just want to defend that maybe full silence also, because it's been so beneficial to me. And I don't think I would have been able to experience it yes, the lessons would have come regardless. Whatever we need to learn will come, but and I'm not saying I'm practicing it even, on a weekly or monthly basis, but it is possible. I mean, one can always, I think, wasn't it Gandhi who had once a week, he kept silence, I think on Mondays. One just has to be strong in one's inner motivation, I suppose. But that's not something I've been doing. But maybe once a year I go into retreat, and I'm always reminded, like, whoa, how blissful is it to be without opinions, to be without responsibilities on that, like, mental plane and to just be allowed to exist and be. And I think there are so many who would benefit in their everyday lives from even a day or even a few hours of silence. If, you know, one would arrange one's life to accommodate that, then that would give back tenfold to everyone around one as well, I think.
I agree, Louisa. I try to get a few hours away from my family every day, because of, I feel it's like a spiritual detox, and also it adds more meaning to your spiritual practices, whatever you're doing, and then later spending more time alone. It really has a deep impact. But I wish I can do
I
it more,
was
I feel like going for a few days, which has never worked out ever. I've failed several times.
It will come, I think so. I was actually thinking of you when I said that I don't even do it daily, and I was thinking of you because I know you do have the discipline to take that time out for yourself. That's
It's
amazing.
like I can't survive if I don't do that. I think I just lose my mind. Maybe crazy people need it more.
I think, yeah, the busier you are, the more you need it. I'm sure about that. The more social responsibilities, the more work you have, the more you need it. I'm absolutely sure about that.
So
what-
go ahead.
Well, it makes sense before that there were instructions given, like instructions given for you to go into khalwa, to do certain things, to do certain dhikr. Now it's very hard to keep holding on. Yani for me in tariqa, it's very hard to constantly do it daily, and without reaching rabita. Honestly, I sometimes I just do it because I have to do it. And it's very hard to put myself in a space for rabita, because it's like things just keep going wrong. Like until when Wallah.
Well, it's the key is repetition, and that repetition will become a reality somewhere of just, one drop, one drop, one drop. And I think intention, if you have the intention and you're not sure how it's going to unfold, I think let the intention be that means of bringing that to you, i.e. the rabita, because you have that intention. Sometimes you try to do something.
Sorry, but what is rabita?
Go ahead.
When you connect with your guide, like when you feel it in your heart, like when your heart is connected to the heart of your guide, and knowledge, it's the time where knowledge should be poured into your heart, but your mind has to be silenced. It's not about the mind, I guess. That's it. That's rabita, when your heart connects with the sheikh or your sheikh. So the intention. Okay.
Yeah, so the intention, I mean, if the intention is there, that is right there, energy. And that energy, your intentions are received even by the guide, right? And they're aware. So how about we just kind of trust the process? So if you think you haven't reached that rabita in that 20-minute fikr, who said that that's not going to happen? I think it's just, everything just happens organically. And the more we try to push something to happen, it's not, doesn't, I think the intention, to me, it's very key. And then let's see how that unfolds, just having that intention.
Don't underestimate the power of desperation too, I would just like to say, because I think, especially if you're not a disciplined person, I'm not, so this has become clear to me. I can't intend unless I actually want it. And then there are some days when I just come to a point where I've exhausted all my sources of sensory pleasure, and I'm like, just, not finding that peace anywhere. And then I'm like, okay, so I don't want chocolate. I don't want to watch a series. I don't want to listen to music. I don't want to hang out with others. And then I'm led to that point of, okay, I'll just sit down and close my eyes or just lie down for a bit and be with myself. And that happens a few times. And then it's very strong. Like I have no choice. I'm led to that point. Like Alicia said, you don't have to, worry about how it happens, I guess. And for some, they have a strong discipline, then they get to enjoy that silence, I guess, more often because they take that time.
Sometimes the idea of silence, it's based on constructs. So, just that bus ride to work, or you just going to work, or, taking a walk in the park, that itself, like, hold on, what is the idea of silence? Are we actually imagining us in a cell with the shawl? Like, what is that idea? So maybe that has to be deconstructed, and hold on, like, stop right there. End of the day, when you kind of do your recollection, you practice silence, let's say 50 times in the day without even realizing it.
But were you silent? I'm not saying you're not, but I'm never silent. If I'm on the bus, I'm on my phone. If I'm driving, I have music. If I'm walking in the forest, I'm like literally caught in something.
Yeah, we're all dopamine deficient. I understand.
Exactly. So I'm never silent. That's the thing. I just want to
Well,
challenge that idea
I
because
don't know.
because I'm pretty aware that I'm not silent. I know when I actually am somewhat silent, but I know most of the day I'm not.
Okay.
And I consciously I stuff my consciousness with all sorts of things just to not be silent because it's so, I don't know, it's so scary to step into that silence sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can confirm that because while I was in my, my cell here, I was, binging on a new scholar that I had discovered, Sheikh Khalid Abu Fadl. He's just a boss. And I was like, literally, I don't think I watched as many videos on some sheikh as I did with him. He was just high five for me and everything. And then my YouTube somehow, like, it's not working on my computer. So I was like, okay. Then after that, I was like, oh, I have the phone, I can do it through the phone. And then the phone falls and I go into a green screen mode and never recovered. Yes, I do have another phone, but, is that the point? So it's, yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to bring it up, not because I don't think we should appreciate the small moments of silence, but maybe also to not dilute the concept of silence, because it's very different to be silent in the forest or to, listen to a podcast when you're walking in the forest. And I know the difference. And if I'm honest with myself, I'm rarely silent, like very rarely. I was maybe 10 minutes maximum silent, maybe 7 minutes yesterday. And then I was consciously trying. So I don't know.
So I have a question. If we find out what silence is, so isn't silence presence? Because presence does not, presence is you being in now, and now demands you not thinking about past or future, but being in now. And can presence be achieved without silence?
Doesn't that again lead us back to the inner silence part? Because yes, I think you can be silent in any situation, but that just means you're actually neutral observer. I guess.
And a neutral observer is a witness and detached and all of that while being present. I last night I thought we were gonna talk about mental health, and then I was like, then we got into the silent thing. when Saida wrote that poem, she talked about custom halwa. That was very, very profound.
Basically, ego halwa.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, I don't know if I'm kidding.
but that was, we need to talk about that.
Yeah, that's what I felt. Just to kind of, I don't even remember what I had written, but to me, this was more like a pick and choose kind of thing. And that worked for me because I
And
couldn't be fully cut off, you know, people coming in, giving me food, or I have to, you know, communicate something urgent matter. So for me, that wasn't working, the full on silence, but I'm really wanting to do that as well, as per Louisa, because I think that is that's just another experience in itself. But maybe to get there, you know, it's transitionary. Maybe that's what it is for me. And I cut you off. Please go ahead.
yeah, we need reflection on that. Like for those who haven't done it, like it also felt like the need of time, and it begins from the concept of deconstructing a certain way how things are carried out, and then the way that you have. That would be interesting to know how you worked with it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for me, in the spiritual practices and however our teachers have guided us, I was never able to digest things like, these are the rules you've got to follow. Just always being a little rebel. And anytime you give me anything, I'll just, that doesn't work for me. That's all I can say. So receiving it in a way that doesn't, you know, it's like reverse psychology. You know, for example, if you were to ask me every day to sit in Dalal Khairat, you know, I would be like purposely picking up a book and reading that. Maybe it's, you know, a book, you know, like Ibn Arabi's book on the 99 divine names or something. I'd rather be focused on that and doing that, because for me, any sort of worship that would become rote, sorry, or due to habit, I always would question myself and say, am I worshiping the worship? Or is that bringing me into hal? For example, if you put on the burda, just randomly, and I'm doing something, I really connect well with the burda. Not sure what it is. And there's no effort involved in sort of getting into that space. But anything that is, at least the way for me, is not through that rigidity. So even if you tell me about khalwa or ittikaf, or you have to do, you know, this and that, I sometimes have my own way of kind of deconstructing it. And I don't think I'm doing it to ease it upon myself. Because anything I wouldn't want to like reject a practice which is beneficial just because of rules. So for me, I feel I could play around with the rules in order for me to get to that space. So my modified or customized halwa had certain, you know, items in there that I was like, no, for sure in. And then some things were like, yes, I can do that. And I can go into that, you know, off this Zoom, inshallah, to say, you know, this is what I've been doing. And like I took this Zoom thing as an exception, because to me, this is to me like food for the soul. So I don't see it as something not in the presence category. I see this as presence. I see this as sohba. I see this as a type of worship. So yeah, and again, it's not probably in the traditional rubric of how things are supposed to be done, but I'm not in that group anyways. I'm bowed out, kicked out of there. I have a few notes I could read before we get into the penning. Mariam may Louisa, would you like to say anything? Just some random notes I had. Do you want to comment on anything before that?
Go ahead.
Okay. Khalwa is the journey to ascend, but not upwards, rather inwards. God can be found in the heart of the human. To transcend the world of form, things, liberation from concepts, ideas, mental constructs, or structures. Khalwa can be beneficial for healing life force or life energy, prana, qudra, chi, for balance, for example, from constant external to internal, that would be a balance, alignment with one's true self, light within, vision from within, as opposed to without or externally. A dialogue between the secret and truth where there is nobody. I'm not sure who said this. I wasn't able to, but I thought it was quite profound. I'm just going to repeat that. A dialogue, meaning in silence, you're in a dialogue between the secret and truth where there is nobody. And then, yeah, I'm just going to read a little piece here. Illumination. To access the light within, we are constantly dependent on exterior means to acquire illumination. Why is that so? Our world comprises of sensorial stimulation, so much so that we depend upon it for everything. Let us go deep within ourselves and extract the nectar, the elixir, from the all-living al-Hayy, and illuminate ourselves once again. Do we recall in this journey of birth that we were in seclusion for 9 months of pure solitude? This solitude or khalwa was our time in the cave prior to entering the world of form. In this period, all was given to us for this journey. All was shown to us. All was made known to us. Ya Hayy, Ya Alim, the all-knowing. Yeah, I think that's it for now. I mean, just a few notes here and there. I could read one more and then we can go on to a penning activity. Silence has many layers. Silence is like a lover who desires you from afar. Silence is an invitation from the beloved to behold presence. Since presence is profound beyond explanation, we become numb, non-sensory in the presence of silence, still numb afloat. Yeah. Do you have something for the penning? Or Louisa?
I do have a penning or a poem,
Okay.
if that's what you mean.
For a reflection, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's something I chose from this hermit, Chinese hermit called Han Shan, who apparently was like a bit of a weirdo. He lived on something called Cold Mountain. So basically, like when we're talking about these cave guys, I think he was definitely one of them. I don't know exactly the Chinese dynasty ages, so I can't say at what time he was living, but I think it's ageless regardless. He says, "In a tangle of cliffs, I chose a place. Bird paths, but no trails for men. What's beyond the yard? White clouds clinging to vague rocks. Now I've lived here how many years? Again and again, spring and winter pass. Go tell families with silverware and cars. What's the use of all that noise and money?
So we do give ourselves a couple of minutes, maybe 10 minutes or less, to do some things. Whatever is flowing through. I was going to put on some music and I said, no, that's just not the point here, because we don't want external. If anybody has their penning ready, then we welcome you to share.
I could share. I'll share. Silence refuses to speak as much as from it you'd like to hear. Silence refuses to speak as much as from it you'd like to hear. A shy bride whom you'll never know, unfamiliar to a phony role. A wireless connection to withdraw, not associate silence with a show. There is nobody between the truth and secret, to be invited except the despised. Another perspective that is not subjective. Are you a subject worth of the kingdom? Are you a subject worthy of a kingdom? Or are you a subject worth a kingdom? How could you find without its door the glory of where we're only sold? That love is scary and unfamiliar. It tears false idols, contracting the heart. 700,000 veils of light and dark from health and wealth. Could you carry both and still be let in? Or do you have to be denied to start a journey within? Denial, anger, bargaining, and sadness. The guards that will greet you or arrest silence. If you forget that it is the target and your arrow is your tongue, it must be sheathed, for this time what we seek is peace. The egg fertilized in silence.
How many years have you been practicing silence?
Words are lies. Words are a veil also. Words.
That was awesome. The start was. I'm gonna recite. Silence. Silence accompanies the lonely. Silence befriends the loner. Silence is the teacher of solitude. Silence mothers the alone. Silence has been the companion of many, yet silence is hardly accompanied by anyone. One who seeks silence has been teared apart and surrendered in the company where he found everything, in one. Silence is the treasure behind veils, a verb, a noun that is to sought and to be sought, to confer upon blessings, asked and asked not.
Sometimes we're compelled always by habit to respond to posts or sharings with words. And sometimes it's just silence is enough. So, yeah.
I was thinking the exact same. And then I was thinking about how, especially when you're silent and there's some sort of a maybe performance of some sort, people start clapping. It's like a harsh sound. And I was thinking of how the deaf do this just, show that they've received it, but it's like without all that noise. But still we seem to have that impulse to have to kind of, confirm that yes, we heard and we appreciated and
I would like to share a few words. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Silence, never enough, speaks volumes to all. To the unjust, they know what they hear, but they are deaf by choice. Because it is the language of the divine, it speaks to all. To communicate, you have to give the time to clean your inside with the holy light. Silence can be painful time after time. It requires patience to shine your soul, for none but for yourself, to see the path because you have to return home.
Language of the divine. Shama. So you want to go ahead, Louisa, with something?
I can, unless May is wanting to say something. She's maybe just looking intent.
MashaAllah, you're very observant when it comes to that. But go ahead, I'll save it for the end. It's just about the words and words.
No, please, if my text is there, just express by all means.
And thank you. In Arabic, the word hadi, which is guidance, hadi, which is from al-huda, is similar to the word hudu. Like they start with the same two letters, hadi and hudu. So for you to be guided, like hudu is silence, and the word wa is always like it's a big word in Sufism. The letter wa is a big, يعني it's a very important in Sufism because I think it resembles, if you see it, it's like the curled, it's like, it looks like an apostrophe, so it looks like a curled person. So hudu is silence, and it has that wa drawn, and then the hadi is basically the last letter, the last two letters changing into a ya, which looks like it's something beneath. So it's interesting how the word hudu kind of hadi, which is the guidance, comes from hudu. It's just a quick connection.
Interesting. And what about the word hudur?
Hudur.
Is that connected to the etymology of what you said, hadi and hudur?
They're different letters, but I'm sure
Okay.
there's.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. There you go. That's why we need to ask the speaker.
Maybe there are always answers in the questions, subhanAllah.
Okay, mashallah.
That kind of, although it's like such a used image, but it just reminded me of the Zen, you know, full cup, empty cup thing, that you can't receive anything if you come with your cup full. So in the same way, if you're always filling your mind with things, then how are you gonna receive anything new? I've been longing like the last, I guess, well, I mean, always, but it's just become clear the last months that, again, you know, to have this kind of practice. And Mariam, now you really inspired me because you mentioned how you actually do that. Although I know that you know, practice that, just to hear it again is very inspiring. So yeah, to remember that it's not taking time away, it's actually giving time, because how often do I actually appreciate what I'm putting my time on anyways? Like if I wake up in the morning and I'm scrolling on Instagram, like how rewarding is that? If I take 10 minutes away of my Instagram scrolling, that's something I definitely can give, and then in favor of 10 minutes of silence.
I have a question. If how about what role does sleep play with silence?
Sleep.
Yeah. Because we are also withdrawing from the world, and sometimes we take respite in sleep as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely when people are depressed, they sleep a lot more. It's like a really good kind of escape from the external reality, definitely. Well, they say that you need less sleep when you meditate. So I think sleep does play a role of kind of processing all of the stuff that we're ingesting in our day-to-day life, whether it's physical, actual, you know, food. If you've eaten very much, then you're sleeping longer. But also if you've ingested a lot of input, then you'll have to somehow process that. Otherwise, you'll be just very tired.
And
And
Sheikh Hamza also gave perspective that sometimes sleeping frees the soul. Like the soul is set free and is able to access so much stuff that it's not able to.
Well, sleep
But-
is also, go ahead, sorry.
No, but how do we connect this with silence? That was the question.
Isn't sleep a lesser death? Okay, so if sleep is a lesser death, basically, what is the difference of being awake and asleep? The lack of doing, right? We're not doing anything in sleep. And when we're not doing, we're technically silencing ourselves. And sleep is almost like, you know, when you mentioned earlier, the mandatory seclusion, right? So that is almost like the sunnah of humanity, where every human being, I mean, we can't survive without sleep, right? Some more, some less, depending on, you know, their sleep cycle requirements. But it's interesting you brought it up, because that to me is like very khalwa friendly information that we all have to do, irrespective of being consciously aware of khalwa or seclusions or spirituality or whatever. It's just the act of non-doing. And like you said, we get the dreams, we get to enter into, you know, so many realms and states of consciousness when we are not doing anything and we're still.
But there, my experience is when you're having if you're doing very sort of strong, or maybe, I don't know, strong, but like if you're doing intentional spiritual practice, more kind of focused, and you're limiting your kind of stimuli from the outside, then it also changes the quality of your sleep. And if you're like in the day-to-day life, now I'm talking from my experience, I'm like having some dreams that are, you know, I would say profound in the sense that they can change, you know, my perception, or I feel like there's something actually like, whoa, going on. But a lot of the dreams are like going through, you know, mental impressions from the past days and like sorting out some maybe subconscious tensions and stuff. But if I'm in a retreat and I'm doing, you know, active like inner work, then my dreams are like extremely, they're like next level, you know, acid dreams. I don't know, but it's like they're very, you know, there's a lot of like next level stuff happening in them. It's not like I'm going around and, you know, cooking dinner in my dreams, but it's like actually, you know, other things happening. So I do think sleep and the inner sort of processes are super closely connected. And I've only heard, I've heard stories about these like great saints who sleep maybe 3 to 4 hours per night. And that sleep is also consisting of some sort of conscious like descent into some, I don't know, just very deep state. So I think there is a link between sleep and, yeah, withdrawal. That's I didn't think of that before. Must be.
Also in sleep, the subconscious never shuts down. So it's very close to the way of divine, right? Because no sleep or slumber can overtake, you know, that so, and that's where all the imaginative sessions happen, through the subconscious. So that never shuts down. So what is that telling you? What is that within you that never shuts down? And what is that in silence that you are actually connecting to within? Not by going on the mountain, but like, you know, finding that within.
And there's also that aspect of letting go in sleep. And I think that's why sometimes it's difficult to go to sleep if you're very engaged in the awake realm. Like I can become very drawn in with all the stuff I'm doing. And then it's like, I don't want to go to sleep because that means I have to somehow fully let go of everything. I guess, yeah, the little death, definitely in that way, because it's a full surrender and you never know. You actually have to fully release your control, because for all you know, you could die. Like, it's not that you've learned, during the years you've been alive, that usually you fall asleep and you wake up, but technically you're like really letting go, and you're just trusting that things carry you. So it is a practice, yeah. How interesting.
Well, there's an actual prophetic prayer that you sleep with that talks about it. What is that now? Because I've stopped teaching the kids and I stopped practicing. The prayer, because when you wake up, you say, Alhamdulillah, alladhi ahyana ba'da ma amatana. Maryam, you've got the kids. What's Allahumma bismika? What is that before you sleep?
Allahumma bismika amutu wa ahya.
Wahia, yeah. So what does that mean, May? Allahumma bismika amutu wa ahya.
In your name, I die and I awake.
There we go. So
Sorry?
according to, in your name, I die and I awake. So basically it's just like, hands down that sleep is a death, because when you awake too, you're giving that, you're mentioning that I have, it's basically like a death we've come out of. Yeah.
And when you wake, you say, and to you is the rising. Not there's a word for it. Nushur is resurrection, right?
Mm,
So even the word you nushur.
mm-hmm. So
And the
death
yogis also talk about
entails, yeah.
the deep sleep being the place where your true being is sort of discovered, but then rarely we're conscious of that time.
I remember in a yoga retreat, my Guru Tarun said, dreams are basically your unfulfilled desires. So that's kind of different than, I don't know if it's different, but it depends, I guess, where you are in which state you're in. Because even in Sufism, like if you're dreaming of your day-to-day activities and stuff, you're still living at the level of your senses. So you're not, these dreams aren't necessarily visions. You're still, yeah, like you said, like subconscious tension that you're still sorting out.
I'm sorry. I am reminded of a thing that I read. The disciple came to Murid. I just read it so many years ago, but it never left my mind. It's very profound. So the disciple asked the Murid that the Murshid that he wants to see the vision of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Murshid Sahab asked him to eat fish before you go to sleep and don't drink water. So when he go to sleep, I think I'm gonna forget it, but I think he saw water, and then the Murshid asked him, "What did you dream?" So he said that I dreamt of, I don't know, the water, it was water, God correct me. They said, if your desire was true, that thirst would have engaged you to see the Prophet. So that is so profound that it highlighted what your true desire is, and he stimulated his thirst to that. But that thirst was able to show him the water. That was the need of that time. But if his thirst or desire was original, but he wants to teach him that if you had dreamt, if your true desire was to see Prophet or something, through this you would have seen it. So it was so profound. So when you said that when May said that we are able to see our desire, that I was reminded of this. So when we talk about law of attraction, they are also saying that you have to meditate on some stuff, and they have created YouTube videos to how to visualize, so that when you are able to see that in dreams, then you can manifest and attract those things. Just relating it with the law of attraction practices in acquiring the worldly wealth, then this really is very profound parable.
Because even before sleep, you go into the alpha state, so your conscious mind starts shutting down, right? So when your conscious mind starts shutting down, then you become fully receptive. So those who want to do like envisioning practices, whether it's for spiritual or worldly attainment, you could do it at that time, because your subconscious is fully receptive, just like that, 0 to 3-year-old who's just sponging in everything. And that's a perfect time to do the envisionings, they say, for those who, who are into these sort of practices, because your conscious mind is not interrupting, it's not poking, it's not, the reasoning faculty is like, Halas, go to sleep now. There's no guard. That's what the hypnotists do too, right? They put the conscious mind to sleep, and then you're dealing directly with the subconscious, where everything is.
We could have a theme on dreams too, because I think it's such a big topic.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a friend who's actually, she's been trained in ta'bir, like dream interpretation, and she's, a Sufi as well. So I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah, I recently came to know she does this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's it.
No, I was just gonna say also, yeah, just on the topic of subconscious and dreams and sleep, there's this practice called yoga nidra, which is like a conscious, guided kind of almost sleep state, like a deep relaxation. And it's said that 45 minutes of yoga nidra equals 4 hours of sleep, because it's, instead of going through, the layers of the content very sort of in that disorganized way that happens maybe when we're sleeping, then you're doing it very sort of step by step. And that gives you that deep rest where you actually can rejuvenate in a very efficient way. And also there, you have specific symbols that are chosen that are presented to the subconscious, and you can insert, of course, your own things when you do it yourself. But I really think, yeah, we should have like a theme on this. Can you write it down?
Dream.
Yeah, we can write it on the Telegram.
Yeah. Dream theme, yeah.
The dream
team.
With the dream team.
Exactly. And I was thinking also with the dreams, I was thinking about dream journeys, and that led me to think also to think if we would want to have maybe some person who has insight in the kind of the way of traveling, sort of, how should I explain it? I don't know if you're familiar
Time
with
and
the way.
Space travel.
Yeah, like, for example, many shamanistic cultures have knowledge in how to use sound, for example, and movement to elicit visions, or, traveling, and how to relate that, because I think in essence, again, like all traditions have the same foundation. So
Yes. Wow.
because dreams are strong tools.
Yeah, definitely. There's many practices to assist in the pathways to influencing wakeful visions. And like you said, the shamans and I guess the occult, the Sufis, mystics, whatever. There's a name for that, I'm forgetting. You know, when there's also, what is that when you're in a dream or you're having a dream and then you're aware of the dream?
Lucid dreaming.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
And you're thinking about astral traveling, or what are you thinking?
Yeah,
Astral
that's of course
traveling,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, astral traveling. Yeah, that's.
I read this answer of a sheikh. He was saying, he was answering somebody about regarding the third eye. So he mentioned that third eye is a materialistic gift. You know, it's and there's another eye, that's the eye of the heart, and there's a difference between these two. So you know, basically he was saying not to desire of for the third eye opening, because it's still materialistic. You know, so aspire yourself for something higher. You know, to connect your heart and to open the eyes of your heart. I think he was saying this is a divine gift compared to the third eye.
I had that question. I've been thinking about it. The third, I think.
I always, of course, like tie it down to the yogic stuff because that's what I'm most familiar with, but there was always this very strong disencouragement to pursue experiences, and like anything you had in a meditation, for example, or visions, anything, we were always like disencouraged to share with one another, and you know, to attach to it in any way, because it was said that it's like then you get just stuck in that kind of realm instead of going further. I think that makes a lot of sense. But then I think also, I remember in the beginning, just when, I think last year when I started the penning course, and Alicia was mentioning something about how the guides also don't allow you sometimes to see dreams or other things when it's like not.
They shut that down basically.
Yeah.
This is one of the characteristics of the Naqshbandi path, where let's say you've been a dreamer for years, all your life, and then you get initiated, and then boom, that sort of switch is shut down, and you're like, what? Because they do not want you to get so engrossed and engulfed in this sort of realm, because you can actually, people are literally living their whole life based on the dream, and then there's no doing, and they're just caught up in that realm. Dreams and visions, dreams and visions, and there's nothing beyond that. So that can be, you know, it's egoic training as well, but it's also good for your mind and stability and you know, grounding, practical means, all of that. And then if they want, they open that up again. It's all part of training. So who's to say if someone is dreaming that they're caught up in that? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there's a lot of that going on in the spiritual world, regardless of tradition. And yeah, it's always about, you know, that kind of stuff going on too.
For what I gathered, Mariam, that you were saying was basically like to not get, not start to pursue all these, you know, cool spiritual,
Yes.
like, what would you call them? Like these gadgets or these, just like distractions, basically.
Mm.
Do you want to share your penning?
Yeah, I can do that. I can I wanted to share something that was done some time back. I'm not sure when, maybe 2020. And then maybe I can just share today's penning as well, because this one is more in flow. So it might be relevant. Okay. Reminiscing the world of unity, where silence and I resided as one. Sound interrupted, sound erupted, breaking our secret. Like the reed, I was cut from source and cried upon realization. This entry into light from layers of darkness, veiling my reality. I was pure consciousness within you, aware, you and I, of each other's existence. I was your secret, you mine. In this timeless space, I resided in you. You awaited my encounter and burned in longing. A ring of fire summoned a manifestation. I was born. It's just basically about the primordial, I don't know if it's primordial, but at least post-primordial state of us being, you know, in the womb. So yeah. For today's, I could read this. It's a little messy, my writing, but I'm going to try to see what I've written. How easy it is to forget ourselves. In silence, we meet ourselves. In meeting ourselves, are we meeting our thoughts and emotions? Are we not beyond what surfaces? Are we our shadows? Sorry. Are we our shadows? Or sorry, just leave are we? Our shadows await us, the whisperings of the soul, where Amara is heard as crisp as the thunder. As we listen to awareness, to Lawama, our blaming soul reminds us of this duality. Taking ownership, we rise to new ways of being, as none to blame but ourselves. Lawama leads us gently to doing and being and doing. Mutma'inna, the content soul where nothing matters, not yesterday, not tomorrow. As peace descends, we trust love to care for us. The varied soul states, what would knowledge alone do without love? Grace. Now, all these do's and don'ts, silence with silence, but no use all this and that without grace from divine. Yeah, that's what I have. Everything is dependent upon grace, because no matter what we do in terms of practices and caring for all the little technicalities of practices, well, what is that without grace? So that's something I think to think about.
You know, when you say silence is scary, and your part in the poem where you said Amara's crisp as thunder, like, I think that's why it's so scary. You know, when you don't do muhasab, when you don't account to yourself, and then you don't know what's happening in your external reality, then you come back to silence and you see Amara, like that's really crisp as thunder. So how strong could you stay with that Amara, and to reach blaming, like to account yourself, account yourself without hiding from yourself. Like I think that's the time where people seek distractions, when it's the time to really take yourself into account and own yourself. We start to, I want to get away. You don't want to be able
Make
to,
excuses.
make excuses. And the more you do, like for me, I find like the more I see where my Amara reached, like my rebellious soul reached, the more I make sense of many things in the past that I've done without really knowing what was the shadow behind it. The shadow becomes clear. It's not like it's just this action. It's like a chain of actions which you never really took account for. So it's very, taking ownership is really the scary part. The crisp as thunder.
Exactly. And to me, like all these, the different sort of soul variations or states, it's just reminding me that the soul is the pilot, right? What is it actually? It's leading us back to the desired state of contentment or mardiya, right? What is the exact definition of mardiya? يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. It's like the peaceful soul. At the end, it's just
remedied, like the mardiya, remedied soul.
So that would be the highest sort of state. But we are, the soul is leading us. And I think it's just awareness that awareness is what allows us to know where we are, right? But then at the end, knowing is not the point. So what if if you're just an observer? We are still dependent on divine grace to alchemize the whole journey or the soul. We're seeking to alchemize the soul so it reaches its highest potential before we return home. And so we must, that's
So the
we
prayer,
seek grace.
so the prayer should be for the grace.
Yeah, because so what if you're doing like 1,000,000 salawat and you're, the most silent and still person and you're getting the best dreams on earth. So what? What does that mean if there's no grace in that? And there's no actual alchemy taking place.
Yes, Aida. I just read this article of Maulana Sheikh Hisham. I think he was in that article. He was explaining this the letter kaf and its its abjad value and all the details of the letter kaf in the Arabic language. So he from kaf he mentioned the word kitab and kitab on the day of resurrection, and he said that actually in reality no book is a good book. No book is a good book until that person has divine grace on him. Because everybody is sinful and nobody is going to stop sinning in some way or the other. I mean,
until the God's grace is upon
on that person whose book it is.
Yeah,
So
you're not entering into bliss.
Saving.
Yeah.
Nothing will be saved. Nobody will be saved unless they have the divine grace. So we should ask, we should desire for the divine grace.
In Christian theology, there's a little clash between Protestants and Catholics regarding the question of grace. I don't know enough of these things to actually, say I'm confident in who says who or who says what, but there's one, maybe it's the Protestants saying, sola gratia, meaning only grace. And I think the Catholics are saying gratia prima, meaning first grace. So meaning that one of them is saying everything happens only on the basis of grace, and that kind of would nullify the need for purposeful action, because then what's the point if anything is like, if everything is regardless based on grace, then what's the point of, you know, worship? What's the point of duty? What's the point of anything? Whereas I think, if I remember correctly, the Catholics are saying first grace, like remember your actions are not what is causing things to happen, but you cannot like withdraw your own kind of participation from the whole picture. So just remember that it's always first grace, but like not just also say, you know, it's only grace. I don't have to do anything.
True.
Mm.
Fatalistic.
It reminds me of intention. Like when you're saying grace, I'm translating it into intention.
Mm.
Only intention or first intention.
Mhm.
Mm. And even in the
Even-
realization, or even in our endeavors, remembering that that also is powered always by something beyond us. Everything, every impulse, every want to do something quote unquote good, although I don't even know what that means anymore, but still, is never from us ourselves, I suppose.
Quran also says that the good is for all the good. The good is from me, and the bad that comes to you is because of your own self. I'm just paraphrasing it. So
I was actually questioning myself how to get divine grace, you know, what to do, what actions might please the divine. Uh, so then I just remembered this dream I read some time ago. It was this person, and there's this website I read Islamic dreams from. So this person said that in that particular dream she entered, I think it was a day of judgment, and I think she entered this place and she took her shoes inside, I guess, and then she yeah, there was God in front of her, and his hands came forward with the khair and the blessing for that person, but suddenly he withdrew his hand, and then she did sujood, and but then still she did not get what she was going to get before. I think then later maybe she took her shoes away. She kept her shoes away from that place, and then the blessings were open again in front of her. So the person who interpreted the dream, the sheikh, he said that it's the manners, it's your good manners which brings the goodness and the khair in your life, not your sujood, not your ibadah, not your just worship.
Mm.
He said it was the shoes were your mannerism basically. So I think the manners of the adab, you say, right, in Sufism as well, it's like learning adab is the first subject before you learn the spiritual practices.
Be'adab ba nasib.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
subhanallah, how to
Subhanallah.
be to yourself, giving adab to your own soul, to your own body, to the
Mhm.
people around you, to their souls, everybody around you, irrespective of the religion or anything. That's, I think, I understood that. That's the closest way. That's the best way to
Yeah.
get the divine
Mm.
grace.
Yeah, so that basically means without adab, we cannot receive anything. And
Yeah,
we
even
have
with your
this, you
worship.
know, exactly. And we have this beautiful analogy where Moses entering into divine presence is asked to remove his shoes, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, his sandals accompanied him into divine presence. And hence the sandala, because it's everything of the Prophet ﷺ was welcome. But again,
Subhanallah.
the adab situation. I guess the rules change for the beloved. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're also reaching the 1 o'clock mark, but I had some notes about distractions, which went into a little bit of the adab. If you'd like, I could share that. And I was having a sohbah with a guide, and you know, she basically was basically expounding on the importance of why sacred silence is so sacred. Because, you know, if you try to customize it too much, and then your rubric is like no different from when you're not in silence, then what is the point? So I'm just going to read a few of the notes to close it off, and then maybe we can end it off with, you know, whatever you guys want. Okay. Distractions, people, ideas, information, conversation, engaging in social media. What breaks the silence? What desecrates silence? Where do you draw the curtain? My master said, silence is possibly shy to unearth, unveil a secret or a necessary opening, but how can it be so without privacy, without disturbance? Real privacy, real intimacy. How can one truly get close, near, when others are allowed into the sacred space that silence calls you to? How is that adab? How is it love? How is it devotion? How is it presence? How is it similar, if not to idolatry? Silence, something. Silence, I don't know. Silence is alone with the alone. In this space, you were invited, and even here you are not present. How will you grow truly? That's it. So it's like, you know, a private invitation, you know, you're being brought into a royal court and you're like, I want to bring my gang, my friends along, and they're not invited. And that's not the adab, that's not the protocol, you know. So the protocol and the adab, and it's just, I guess it's a desecration of that so-called, not so-called, but the whole idea of being alone with the alone through silence, through space, and through seclusion. Why are we allowing all these influences to come when we are being sought audience, right? That's just really weird, I guess. It's just not, it's not going to do anything. Any closing thoughts from all of you? Feel free to share.
Louisa, would you like to share your penny?
Shall I share it?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't even share it?
I didn't.
Oh, so sad. You better share it.
What words can I write that betters what silence can express? I come to silence like a long-lost child, ashamed and guilty for forgetting once again the vows I promise each time in silence's embrace. Silence accepts me Silence accepts me without reluctance or distaste, just like a clear spring water well, swallowing up the bundle of chatter and bones that I am, allowing me refuge under the still surface. All that I am becomes evident there, that I'm like a funnel, drawing in the impressions around me, forgetting that I too am clear in essence. It's hard work keeping together a house of cards. Luckily, there's a time limit to rid myself of all these costumes, and that time limit is death.
I have a question. With silence, do we have to, no, with sacred silence, so is the ultimate purpose of silence to remember death?
Isn't
Is it the
the
ultimate?
remembrance of death to remember? Sorry.
Go on.
Is the ultimate purpose of silence to remember death?
I'm thinking the ultimate purpose of remembering death is to remember life behind what apparently dies, because we're so obsessed with this body and this personality. And then remembering death is basically just a remembrance of who we really are, and thus finding that everlasting life instead. So I would say silence is just a means to find that same formless presence in ourselves, because I think silence makes it easier to become formless, and words are like, that's why I mentioned the house of cards. It's like words add to that sort of structure that we keep feeding ourselves with, like all these roles we play and all these stories we have about ourselves and the history and the hopes and dreams and everything that we think we are. And then silence is also a shedding off. So it depends, I guess, what death means.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for explaining. I mean, the greatest thing I learned from the session, and is how we have to approach silence with adab, like to be, sometimes like our approach to silence is very superficial when there is, like your poem Alicia. Now we have like our social media, our stuff, and then we expect to just sit and be silent, but then you pick it up and you're not worthy of receiving anything if you're not really realizing you're entering into a divine presence. Sometimes we're like spoiled children, like we just want with stuff with Allah. So thank you for being patient and explaining what silence means.
I think we're all struggling with that, even in prayers, for example. I mean, praying just out of, habit or obligation, and then there's an actual prayer. So even the training of the prayer is to experience that sort of ascension or that silence or that sacred space during those few minutes or moments, depending on how fast we read, right? Or slow we read. the Wahhabis stretch the prayers, the Turks shorten it like this, and whatever. The point is that, and I noticed myself, and I'm just going to do a little marketing here, that I was always questioning, I don't know, the prayers and all of that, the zikr and everything. There's a specific Sufi that I resonate with, and I forget. We talked about him May in the past. Okay, we'll figure it out later. But he questioned a lot of these practices and deconstructed. What are we actually doing? So worshipping the worship, for example. I guess I'm trying to remember his name, so I'm getting off sidelined.
Where was he from?
Oh yeah, pardon? It's a Persian name. Anyways, we'll get back to that. He might just pop up before we end the Zoom. His presence may arrive. Just for example, in the prayer, right? If we're very, I guess you have to be introspective and also very, what's the word when you are analytical, maybe sometimes, like, I'm doing zikr, but like, am I really in zikr? I'm attending a gathering, like, where's my mind? I might be still with a shawl, but like, seriously, where am I? Right? So, so the point is, even in prayer, which is, like the 5 times prayers, or if you've chosen the Jafri way of the 3, because most people I know, they're not able to do the 5. So then, just practice the 3 times as per the Quran anyways. So what is it called? I noticed that, just paraphernalia, for example, like there is the adab, for example, when you pray, you have to do wudu, you have to make ablution, you have to be, obviously, prior to ablution, you need to be pure, in a pure state, or a cleansed state. And then you've got certain things, like certain parts of your body that need to be covered, for example, plus minus, depending on, the varying schools of thought. But even if you do all of that and you've got your Arabic solid, you know what you're saying, doesn't mean you're actually in prayer, right? And just going into that desire to become formless and zero status during the prayer, I found something helpful, because sometimes you need aids in the journey. The tasbih, for example, is an aid to the zikr, and the actual point of zikr is to be in remembrance constantly anyways in your heart, even if I'm on Zoom. So that's the actual desired, I guess, sort of station or state, but we need help. We need the crutches, right? So the cloak, I found that, like, the cloak from La Maison de Rumi, right? So that would put me into, I don't know if it's just my mind, but that would just at least help in me not noticing, my fingers or my clothing. I don't like patterns, just something, just, because I'm already struggling with my mind, right? I'm struggling, and my heart may be in la la land. So then that has helped me. So the point is that, we might be doing all these things, adab and all of that, but we may need help through external means to get there. So be easy and compassionate and real with ourselves, and then hopefully we'll make it someday. What am I supposed to say? So head on over and make your orders, because then I'll have a reason to order them from my supplier.
Yes, inshallah.
Yeah,
I'm first in line.
okay, fine. Another reason for me to get the website up. So yeah, so that's that. I think we had a very interesting session today, talking about real things that matter. And it's perfect, I guess, because there's like 7 days left or 6 days left till Ramadan. And that too is, you know, there's a lot of awareness required in Ramadan because there's so many do's and don'ts or don'ts while you're fasting. So you could be not eating, and then you could be just, you know, whatever, swearing all day long. So yeah, it's, I think, a nice little practice.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I would also wanted to request that since it's Ramadan, like, can we have the next one session like a bit earlier so that, you know,
There's like 6 days or 7 days till Ramadan. How early? What are we gonna do? Do we wait
like,
till Ramadan is over and skip it, you know, bump it up 1 week
no,
after?
I'm saying 1 week. Yeah, like, yes, after like 1 week of Ramadan, so
Sure.
that it will be of assistance
Okay, so you're saying
for Ramadan.
instead of doing it at the end,
Yes.
because this is not helpful.
No, this is helpful.
No, I'm kidding. So you'd rather just do the last
In the middle,
Saturday.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe in the middle.
maybe in the
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't
For the
mind.
last 10
Just depends
days.
on everyone's schedules and how it works, because, you know, I don't know people's devotions and sometimes commitments and all that. We can take a vote maybe on the group for either after Ramadan or in between. Yeah, just, I guess we'll see how that works. And I was even thinking of the following month, when we decide on the speaker, we can maybe have something where you can bring along a friend, a dost, you know, just an idea, just to get people into this sort of experience of, you know, these virtual sohbas. Sometimes that's not experienced, so then we should open the doors up to let people experience that.
Okay.
All right.
It could be an Eid special plus one.
Yeah. 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 We have something like that, but I think it's sort of like a paid thing. So we'll add one, like, you know, just bring a dost, and that's, you know, and they just get to sign up without having to do anything. Yeah, we'll do that, inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right. May, would
Thank-
you like to give us some sort of prayer, like anything? It's not like Sheikha style, just like, you know, we need grace.
Can we just end it with Inshallah Ya Rab? Actually, Inshallah, since you told me I don't have shaitan dream. Inshallah, we benefit to this Ramadan. Inshallah Ya Rab. I don't have a prayer in my heart, but I want to read Surah Al-Asr. I think it's a good way to close any of these gatherings. العصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. يا رب اجعلنا نرى الحق حق والباطل باطل يا رب آمين. Let us see reality as is and let falsehood fall, for it is destined to fall. يا رب آمين آمين. فاتحة for our guides. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل محمد.
Perfect. So
Ramadan
I'm going to
Mubarak.
stop. Yeah, Ramadan Mubarak
Ramadan
to
Mubarak.
everyone.
Ramadan Mubarak, everyone.
I will shut the recording now. All right.